What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ready Gold Standard podcast. My name is Zach Hernandez, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Matt Llewellyn. Before I throw it over to Matt, if you are tuning in on Twitter, head over to youtube.com/49ers Hive and join from there so we can see and interact with your comments. We're not ignoring you on Twitter. We just can't see it. And if you're here on YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe. While you're here, we appreciate it. We're going to be recapping the 49ers 38-13 win over the Arizona Cardinals in their final regular season game. Now that I got all that out, Matt, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good, Zach. We just watched the 49ers get their 10th in a row, finished the regular season on a strong note. Looked a little dicey early, considering the first play of the game for the Cardinals, but 49ers responded. Big 38-13 win. 49ers finished 13-4. They will finish with the second seed in the NFC due to the Giants, opting out of playing this week and allowing Philadelphia pretty much a free ride for number one. So they'll host the first round of the playoffs, and anything that's not Philadelphia. It's an exciting time. Would have liked to see maybe an extra week to get a little more healthy, but they also get to continue the momentum. So either way, at least the 49ers will be playing at home in front of their base. And now it just remains to be seen whether it's going to be the Seattle Seahawks or the Green Bay Packers.
Right. Yeah. Man, that Seattle game, we were watching it before we went on here. Unfortunately, the Rams couldn't do the whole take care of business, I should say, but it is what it is. We'll get into who we prefer to see, Seattle or Green Bay, a little later in the show. Like I said, guys, hit like, hit subscribe, copy the link, share on social media. We appreciate it. Matt, you have a question here early on from Bolts Nation 88. Do you think Greenlaw comes back next week?
I think it's possible. It just depends on symptoms and how he's feeling. But I do think that part of the reason why they didn't really push for him to go this week was to rest him for the playoffs. And it becomes all the more important. I haven't heard an update, but Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles left today with a neck injury. Those typically aren't good. I don't know if it's a stinger or something else. We'll see as the week goes forward, but they look pretty thin at linebackers. So having Dre Greenlaw back out there with the way that he's been playing this season is pretty important.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting because Kyle Shanahan, we just listened to his press conference, and he basically said, there weren't any injuries. That was huge, going into the playoffs. So that leads me to believe it's not that serious. Hopefully not, or else he would have brought that up, I'd imagine. So let's get into this game. Like I said, the 49ers beat the Cardinals 38-13. Going into halftime, it was somewhat close. The Niners got that last second in the first half touchdown to pull away, but I think it was like 21-13 or something like that going into half. 21-13. And then in the second half, the 49ers just blew the game wide open, didn't allow another point. Was anything in the first half concerning to you? We saw, again, DeAndre Lenore be a liability, but then nothing else after that. So how concerning is that for you?
It is a little bit concerning, although that was like a trick play. And, as our boy Croc has said, and we've seen 1,000 times, it's not that he's not there. It's not that he's playing terrible coverage. He just has really bad ball skills. He is not a ball hawk. He's terrible at making a play at the catch point, and that just kind of, shown through. What's more concerning for me is that teams seem to have figured out that the best way to beat the 49ers defense, at least in the short term, is to spread the defense out and use a lot of screens, use things near the line of scrimmage. And the 49ers gave up two consecutive third and longs where they basically, it was a check down and the 49ers were so spread out they couldn't get to the ball carrier in time. And against, Arizona, that's fine. And we kind of got away with it, even though it was an overtime game against the Raiders last week. Eventually, we're going to get to a team that's going to be better than Seattle or better than Green Bay, somebody like a Philadelphia, or even if we get to the Super Bowl, a Kansas City, a Cincinnati, a Buffalo. Those teams will make us pay on those long drives down the field. Okay, 5, 6, 7 yards at a pop. Now you're looking at a 13-play drive, and then the next drive, they have more home run capability. There's going to be times where the 49ers aren't going to be able to play in that style, and they need to really tighten up what they're giving up. Again, it was a situation of where a guy like David Blau, who's like, who is this guy, right? It's 14 of 18, Didn't really, he threw 2 picks, granted, and that's fantastic. 49ers finished with 20 on the season, which is tied for Pittsburgh for most in the NFL. But at the same time, having, quarterbacks for each team, it's like they're 20 of 27 today, which is a really good completion percentage between David Blau and Trace McSorley. And they weren't running out fantastic players, against a better quarterback with better playmakers, which is what the playoffs are all about. It could become a problem. But I don't want to take too much away from the 49ers. They finished undefeated in the NFC West, 10-game winning streak. The 49ers defense is, I believe, going to finish number 1 in scoring in the NFL. So, just a couple of things, and it's just more of nitpicking more than anything, I think.
Yeah. And that's basically what Kyle Shanahan said as well in his post-game press conference was, I try not to stand up here, be too negative, but there are things that we can improve upon. And as a head coach going into the playoffs, you've said it a ton of times here on the show, one blown coverage is the difference between winning and moving on in the postseason or winning a playoff game and not. So it may be nitpicky, it may be nothing much, but it's still something. And the best teams are always trying to improve upon however they can.
Exactly. And I think that the thing that offsets that normally wouldn't have before, and we're going to talk about, the 49ers scored 38 points today. That makes 4 times that they've scored. I believe the offense has scored over 30 points with Brock Purdy as a starter, 30 or 35 points. So this is a situation where in years past, maybe the 49ers aren't able to score as much. And you're looking at, okay, these big plays, now they have to play from behind. Can they do that? I think that this offense is explosive enough that it becomes a little less of a critical thing, but it's still very important nonetheless. It's just nice to see that the 49ers offense at least is pretty crispy.
Yeah, I agree. It really, really is a huge difference between this team and this team of years past is if they do get down 7 to 10 points, it's not like game over. This team cannot play from behind. They can play from behind, and we've seen that happen. So it really is impressive. They did. I'm not going to count it because it wasn't technically a start for Brock Purdy, but they put up, 33 against the Dolphins, and then in his first start, 35. The short week against Seattle, 21. Game against Commanders, 37. Raiders, 37. And now the Cardinals, 38. So they're putting up points. And it's not like earlier in the year when the defense was getting a pick 6 or something to add to that total. This is basically all on the offense. So it really is impressive what the 49ers have been able to do with Brock Purdy, including today. He got pulled out midway through the third quarter, I believe, and he had a career high 3 passing touchdowns. What did you think of Brock Purdy today, Matt? He wasn't necessarily lighting it up to start the game, but he finished with a pretty respectable stat line. Let me see. He finished 15 of 20, 178 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks, but he was sacked 4 times.
Yeah, and 2 of those sacks were because he was trying to make plays with his feet. And I think that early on, a lot of people were saying how much of a good athlete that Brock Purdy is. I think now I can confidently say that I was right all along when it's more about him being short area quickness, being able to move in a pocket and making the first guy miss rather than an actual athlete. I don't think that he's terribly athletic. I think he's less athletic than people give him credit for. but he's athletic enough to make a guy miss. Today with athletes like Isaiah Simmons, it's not happening. JJ Watt, still a beast. I saw him just essentially slip by Burford on one play, and then, Slim Mike gonna Slim Mike on another play. He looked a little uneven to begin, but he got it on track, particularly getting Ayuk over 1,000 yards, which was really big. There were a couple of really nice throws that he made. I didn't see anything where he puts it in harm's way. So Purdy finishes the season with about 1,378 yards, 13 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. And he's using the weapons, and the 49ers are getting healthy at the right time. I mean, I think that, Charles said it here. He says Kittle always backs number 10, but he looks like a superstar with Purdy at QB1. Listen, 7 of George Kittle's 11 touchdowns have come in the last 4 weeks with Brock Purdy as the starting quarterback. So shout outs to, I'm sure at this point, former listener, Melissa, who, called us out because of our opinion that Kittle was in decline. Maybe I spoke too soon. I think the Jimmy and Kittle connection was in decline because he looks like a completely different player with Brock Purdy. He had 2 touchdowns again today. He's absolutely outstanding in the last month of the season. He's looked phenomenal. So shout outs to George Kittle doing his thing, and, Brock Purdy able to get him the ball in space. That touchdown at the back of the end zone was just real nice.
Yeah, it was very impressive. There was a couple of throws pretty impressed me by. Let's see, there was a quote here that I saw. It just went away. Here it is. Brock Purdy on that touchdown. He said, I think Isaiah Simmons did a good job being tight on George early on, but I was like, you know what? I think George can break out of this with a quick burst. So just really, really impressive for Brock Purdy to kind of extend that play and then put it in a spot where only George can get it in the back of the end zone, or else it's going to be incomplete. So I was impressed by that. Bolt Station asked, I hate to even ask this, but don't tell me Jimmy G even plays it down for this team in the playoffs. Barring some injury to Brock Purdy, there's no way.
No, there's reports that he'll be available, and certain personalities in 49ers Twitter are taking it to mean like he's going to play. Listen, here's how I consider it. The 49ers are riding the hot hand with Brock Purdy, right? Even if Jimmy G does come back, it would be later in the playoffs, which means that Brock Purdy is winning playoff games. So you don't disrupt that apple cart just to put in Jimmy Garoppolo just because he's a vet, hasn't played in, 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it is, to just come in. By the way, how many more points per game are you averaging with Brock Purdy at quarterback? There's absolutely no way. Jimmy G will not play another down for the 49ers unless something catastrophic happens. Plain and simple. The Jimmy G era is completely over in San Francisco. Thanks for everything that you did, but goodbye and good riddance. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
I think that it would be different if the 49ers were barely kind of squeezing by teams to get a dub, maybe like, 16-13, 20-17, but they're not. Like, they're completely blowing teams out. And aside from the Raiders game, they're winning by multiple scores and winning comfortably and putting up big points.
Which, by the way, they still scored points in that Raiders game. It's not like they weren't,
Yep.
So it's one of those things where you look at. So the 49ers were down to the Dolphins when Purdy comes in. They finished with 33 points that game. They beat the Bucs 35-7. They have a close game with the Seahawks, but it's a division opponent, and they win the division 21-13. Then 37 points against the Commanders, 37 points against the Raiders, 38 points today, right? Prior to that, what are we looking at? 13 points against the Saints, 22 against the Chargers, 23 against the Chiefs, 14 against the Falcons. Like, it's night and day difference. 10 against the Broncos. These are what Jimmy Garoppolo gives you. And so I don't think that the 49ers are going to go back to that willingly, just because Jimmy is some vet or whatever. And I think you can see it in the players who, say what you will about their support for Trey Lance. They've definitely galvanized around Brock Purdy, and they're showing Purdy all kinds of love. So I don't think that Jimmy would ever play it down for this team unless it was absolutely necessary. It would be an injury, essentially.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's funny, after the Tampa game, I believe Nick Bosa gave that quote, "We got a quarterback," talking about Brock Purdy. I mean, I think it's very clear how this team feels about Brock and moving forward with him. They feel they could win games, and they have won games, so they're rightfully so. I want to give a quick shout out to Brandon Ayuk, who had his first career 1,000-yard receiving season. I didn't see what he finished the game. He finished the game with 4 catches for 59 yards. He needed 45 yards. So I believe he finished the year with like 1,015 yards. Really impressive stuff. A couple of people called us crazy back in July and August when we said Brandon Ayuk is the better receiver on the team, and will finish the team, leading the team in yards. And he certainly did. Around the NFL, I should say around the NFC, you opened up the show, Matt, talking about the Eagles barely squeezing one out against the Giants. So they are going to go into the playoffs as the number 1 seed. They'll have that bye, and the 49ers go enter as the 2 seed. But everyone else looks pretty average, right? I mean, the Lions and the Packers play tonight to determine that 7th seed, but you got Dallas, who I believe, I didn't see the final score, but they were losing last I checked. I think they ended up losing. Let me see. Dallas. I don't know if you caught that final score, but 26-6. They got whooped. Dallas, Tampa. I don't even know who else is in the playoffs, but yeah, it's nothing to be worried about. The Giants, excuse me. Who, other than the Eagles, are you most concerned about facing?
In the NFC playoffs, I mean, it's just Philadelphia. That's it. No other team is super concerning. If it would have been that Seattle had lost and Detroit won, Detroit would actually be a team that I would worry about. But I'm not scared of the Packers. I'm not scared of the Seahawks. Minnesota is imminently beatable. I think they're the next toughest team, though, if I had to pick one. But the Giants are not scary at all. This is just going to be a situation where the 49ers should at least make the NFC Championship game with minimal difficulties. So, Ace Press says CMC is the main reason this offense has exploded. He's definitely a huge part of it. I do want to acknowledge that. But at the same time, I just don't think we can undersell what Brock Purdy does for this team that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't. You know what I mean? Jimmy Garoppolo played in far more games than Purdy, but finished with only 3 more touchdowns. Had more yardage, sure, but Jimmy Garoppolo finished the season with 2,400 yards, Purdy with 13, and Purdy only started 5 games. So I don't know. You tell me. Purdy makes throws that Jimmy Garoppolo does not make. There's exactly one thing that Jimmy Garoppolo does better than Brock Purdy, other than being in magazines or whatever the case may be, and that's doing quarterback sneaks, which we saw again today. Brock Purdy is not good at those, but at the same time, Brock Purdy is really good at putting the ball in positions. I don't see those oh shit Jimmy throws from Brock Purdy. I just don't. Brock Purdy will throw the ball away if nothing's there. So
I agree. I just think that what Brock brings is not only the ability to see the entire field, not only the ability to push the ball downfield, but he's calm. Like, he has this level of calmness that Jimmy never has. And, I'm getting a vision of Grant Cohn kind of making fun of Jimmy patting the ball when he gets the happy feet in the pocket. We haven't seen that from Brock, and it's extremely impressive considering, again, for the millionth time, he's a rookie. Like, he hasn't even played 16 games. So I'm really impressed by this guy, and I'm eager to see what he can do going into the postseason, and really make a name for himself, or continue to make a name for himself. I want to ask you, though, Matt, saw Deebo Samuel and Elijah Mitchell back today, and I believe this is the first time Brock Purdy has played with Deebo, Christian, Elijah Mitchell, kind of all of the cast of the 49ers offense as a whole. In my opinion, it seemed like, I don't know if Kyle Shanahan was calling plays differently, but it was a little awkward getting things going, and maybe he was trying too hard to integrate everybody back into the offense. Do you think that it's going to be a lot easier in the playoffs to kind of get everybody involved?
I just think that I don't know if it was any difference in play calling or anything like that, or if it was just some hiccups or whatever. I think that, Elijah got 5 carries. Deebo touched the ball a few times. I think that there were plays there for Deebo. but Brock Purdy doesn't call the same game that Jimmy Garoppolo does. We don't know what the reads are. I think it's one of those things where Kyle is trying to work them in slowly, and the actual game plan will be a little different for the playoffs. I think this was more about getting them some reps, getting their feet wet, getting them back out on the field more than anything today.
Okay, that makes sense. I just, as long as he doesn't like overdo it, force feeding, I think this team will be fine. There's so much talent, especially on the offensive side.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe people think that Debo was being force fed, but he only had 1 carry for 4 yards and 2 catches for 20. I only think he was targeted 3 or 4 times, so not like anything out of the ordinary. Right. I think the distribution was pretty even. Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle had the most receptions with 4. McCaffrey had 3. Everybody else had 2 or 1. I just don't think the 49ers had to throw that much. They actually had way more rushing attempts today. But when you get Elijah Mitchell with 5 carries, Christian McCaffrey with 10, and they combine for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, I mean, what else? You don't really need much. I think the defense put them in really good positions, forcing turnovers to where they had a short field a lot of the time. And again, by the time that it's the mid-third quarter, this game is pretty much over. So you don't need to throw the ball anymore. You don't need your starters out there running. This was more of a coronation on the season and getting ready for the playoffs, getting those guys some reps than it was about hardcore game planning. I think that Kyle Shanahan was very aware that the now 4-13 Cardinals with David Blau and DeAndre Hopkins and, all that stuff going on, it was more about let's get everybody out of there without injuries and stay kind of warm and loose and not get rust on ourselves taking a week off than anything else.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that. The 49ers, again, I know I said to start the show, but 10 straight wins to end the year. 11 weeks ago, they're 3-4. I mean, if you would have told me they finished the season 13-4, I would have just probably laughed in your face. It's no small feat, especially with 2 different quarterbacks playing meaningful time in that stretch. We talked about this, and I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but why isn't Kyle Shanahan the front runner for Coach of the Year? What do you think?
Because people are stupid. It's because people are stupid. I saw a guy put on Twitter this little picture or whatever of Saleh, McDaniels, and Kyle Shanahan all pointing at Doug Peterson for Coach of the Year, and it's like they were 9-8 in a pretty weak division. And 9-8 won that division. So you're telling me a team that didn't get double-digit wins, that coach is going to win Coach of the Year over Kyle Shanahan, who not only wrapped up his division a month ago, comes into the NFC playoffs as the number 2 seed, almost gets the number 1 seed because it goes to show how important the quarterback position is. So now the Philadelphia coach, Nick Sirianni, goes without his guy for a couple of games. They lose both those games and look terrible. And what does Kyle do? He has a 10-game winning streak on his 3rd quarterback of the season, going 13-4 with the number 2 seed. I don't care if there was talent here before. I don't care that they made the NFC Championship game last year. Each season is a new season, and for the 49ers to have the injuries that they went through at the most important position in football and win 13 games, it should be a unanimous Coach of the Year for Kyle Shanahan. It's not if. It's absolutely his. Just like the Defensive Player of the Year is absolutely Nick Bosa's. There should be no conversation about it. And anybody else saying anything different is just plain wrong.
I agree 100%. A lot of people are like Nick Sirianni, Brandon Dable. And look, I can appreciate what these guys have done, but Nick Sirianni maybe had a little more of a case before he lost 2 straight with his backup quarterback. Like Kyle Shanahan has won now, was it 5 straight with his 3rd string quarterback, his rookie. It really isn't a debate, in my opinion. The main argument I've seen against Kyle is, well, he had a good team.
The last pick in the draft rookie, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even a first rounder.
No, somebody who was meant to be a practice squad guy this year. And again, the main argument I've seen against Kyle Shanahan is, well, he already had a good team. This team was in the championship game. This team has good defense. Yeah, because Kyle Shanahan is responsible for that. It's not like he just inherited it. He built this team. And this year, for what he's done, in my opinion, he deserves Coach of the Year, just more so than the other guys. Not to take anything away from them.
Right. I mean, look, listen, all you have to do is go back to the end of 2018. That team started off, I believe, 0-9 or 0-10 or something like that. They were like 1-10 when Jimmy Garoppolo, came in and they won 5 straight or whatever. And then he takes them to the best record in the NFC and they go to the Super Bowl and he doesn't win it that year. So what does this man have to do to win the coach of the year? I mean, I just think it's preposterous that you're hamstringing somebody. Oh, they have a good team. Yeah, but there were a lot of circumstances surrounding that team. Debo Samuel missed time. Elijah Mitchell missed most of the season. Trey Lance goes out week 2. Jimmy Garoppolo goes out week 10 or 11 or whatever it was. You get your 7th round Mr. Irrelevant third QB on the team, rookie in there. You're on a 10-game winning streak. You're number 2 in the NFC. I mean, what else do you have to do? Not to mention the loss of Javon Kinlaw for a lot of the year, the loss of Eric Armstead for a lot of the year, the loss of Azeez Al-Shire for a lot of the year, Emmanuel Mosley done for the season. Like all these injuries that he has to deal with, they just overcome and overcome and overcome. And Kyle is just in his bag week in, week out. And he's not the coach of the year. Yeah, right. Get real.
It's almost laughable, but it is what it is. And, if the NFL is going to continue to have this East Coast bias, which they always have had, all you can do is kind of laugh at it. Like you said, 2019, he definitely deserved it. I believe John Harbaugh won it. It is what it is. Moving back to this game, the 49ers, I believe, were trying to shore up any weaknesses going into the postseason and using this game as a chance to do it. Obviously, the 49ers defense didn't like the way the game started off with that 77-yard pass on that trick play. But other than that, they only gave up 6 points the rest of the game. Or was it 6 points? Let me see, 33-8. Yeah, 6 points the rest of the game. This defense, do you think, is looking good and definitely good enough going into the playoffs? A lot of people were like, oh, my God, the defense is cooked. 49ers are going to need to rely on their offense, especially going into the playoffs. I don't really think that's the case. I think the defense looked pretty good today. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's definitely things that they can improve upon. And I think that there is a spot where they struggle, and that's when defenses can spread them out close to the line of scrimmage. But the fact of the matter is that, the defense does a pretty good job of, not giving up points, of staying in control of things. And again, the 49ers are going into the playoffs with the top-ranked defense in the NFL. I don't know what else you want. Every team gives up big plays. That's just how it is. Like the 85 Bears gave up big plays or whatever. I think this is one of those situations where we're a little more in our head about it because we watch the team every week. And again, it's that bias where we have to watch every play that they have when, maybe we're just watching red zone for the other teams or whatever. I guarantee you, matched up play to play, that other teams give up more big plays than the 49ers. I mean, we watch our offense make big plays against all these defenses time after time after time. So fact of the matter is, I think it's a nitpick. I think that this defense is better than the 2019 team. I mean, they definitely forced more turnovers, that's for sure. So with a better defense, and now you're talking about a better offense, I think this is a great shot for the 49ers to make a huge, huge playoff run.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and Ace Bruss said today, safeties ended with 11 interceptions on the year. Tashaun Gibson, really impressive. Had
what
2
a revelation, right?
Yeah. I mean, Kyle was asked about him in the postgame. He goes, did you sign him basically just thinking he'd be that kind of placeholder until Jimmy Ward got back? And he was like, yeah, basically, but I played with him in Cleveland. I knew what type of player he was, and I'm not surprised that he was able to kind of lock down that spot. And Jimmy Ward has been playing really well in that nickel spot as well. So it's really impressive what the 49ers have been able to do. Obviously, Hufanga has his moments of lapse in judgment, however you want to call it, where he gives up the big play. It looked like today they were kind of playing him closer to the line of scrimmage to allow him to not get beat deep. So maybe that's D'Amico Ryans trying to overcome or compensate for Hufanga's mental errors. The 49ers today had 4 turnovers. Their defense accounted for 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble, and I believe they had 2 fourth down stops as well, if you want to throw those in. 6 total turnovers. Impressive stuff from this team going into the postseason, just rolling on all cylinders. And you touched on it in your answer there, Matt. I agree. The way that they're able to just attack on both sides of the ball, the defense, even if it is having a bad day, they can now count on their offense to go out there and put up points. If they had this offense back in week 2 when they went to Denver on Sunday night, they would have blown out the Broncos, but unfortunately they didn't. And that game or week 3, excuse me, that game and the week 1 game against the Bears ended up kind of being the difference between the 49ers having the 1 and the 2 seed. We debated this going back and forth the last couple of weeks. Is it better for the team to rest? Is it better they don't rest? Obviously, it's better they get the rest to get healthy, but there is an advantage to just continuing to play, right? The momentumness.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that, teams on a bye, they don't win as much as you'd like to think. And, it's no wonder that we have example after example of wildcard teams making it to the Super Bowl every year. I think that momentum is a huge thing. And whereas in a normal season game coming off of a bye week, maybe you come out, there's a little bit of rust, you come out a little flat, but you're playing a bad team. Maybe that doesn't hurt you. But again, in the playoffs, every team is good. So rust becomes more of an issue, I think. And to me, it's exactly why the Eagles played Jalen Hurts today. They knew that, they need to get him some type of. The Giants were resting their starters. It's very well conceivable the Eagles thought that they were going to win that game anyway, but they had to put Jalen Hurts out there to at least get him some throws before going on a bye week, right? Because then it's like, oh, now he hasn't played in a month. And what's he going to look like? And now you need him in the most precious time. I think that momentum is really something that you can't overstate as being important for a team's success. I like the fact that the 49ers get to go into the playoffs with momentum. It seems like they're getting healthier. Dre Greenlaw becomes very important. I'd like to see him back. I think Aaron Banks is another guy. We want to see him back. But a lot of the pieces that, the skill position guys, the Elijah Mitchells, the Deebo Samuels coming back, those are huge for the team. So getting them some play, getting momentum going into the playoffs, huge in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. We have a question from Hunk Fat Matt. Thoughts on Mitchell's return? He averaged like 11 yards per carry today.
Yeah, his biggest issue is staying on the field. He's always run explosively. I think that he's a guy that, the only game where I've seen him ineffective was that NFC Championship game against the Rams, and it's because Jimmy Garoppolo was so limited that it was like, we're not going to let Elijah Mitchell run all over us, right? Like, I think he had 1.9 yards per carry in that game. But it's like, you stop the guys that you're really worried about. He looks like he always looks, very explosive. And with the weapons on this team and the fact that Brock Purdy can actually get the ball out, I think that bodes well for him being effective going forward. The 1-2 punch of him and Christian McCaffrey, which we haven't really gotten this season, it's just going to be that much extra special in the playoffs. So hopefully he can stay healthy for a deep playoff run.
He was really impressive. I was trying to count the amount of games he actually played this year. Was this his 4th game? Is that right?
I think this was his 5th.
5th. Okay. Yeah. Did not play much. When they said this was his first rushing touchdown of the year, I was like, what the hell? It's week 18. How is this his first rushing touch? But he was injured. Like you said, his biggest kind of knock was not being able to stay on the field. I wanted to share the info from this tweet from Cash on Twitter. Obviously, the 49ers swept the NFC West this year with the win today. But he said not only were they undefeated, they just straight up obliterated the rest of the division. They were 169. They scored 169 points and allowed 53. So 169 versus 53 points in the NFC West, 116-point differential, beating them by almost 20 points per game. Like, there was almost no competition in the division. And they could, depending on what happens tonight, be the only team to make the playoffs, which is a huge difference from last year. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, it just goes to show that the NFL, is one of those leagues that where year to year, you never know what's going to happen. I know a lot of the Twitterati is nitpicking the 49ers, a couple of people in particular, about that they haven't played anybody, that they haven't been tested, that this team didn't play anybody with a good record. Listen, they came into the league, I believe, with a second place schedule due to how they finished last year. It didn't work out that way. Tampa Bay was a lot worse than people thought. The Rams were horrific. They were the defending Super Bowl champions, and they finished the season, I believe, with 4 wins. They were absolutely terrible. Seattle was maybe a little better than people would have thought, given that Russell Wilson was gone, but not much you could do about that. And so on and so forth, right? A lot of the teams that we thought and eyed I mean, when we beat the Miami Dolphins, that was a huge deal. They were number 1 in the AFC at that point. They had the best record in the AFC, and the 49ers just trounced them. And they went on this run where they just lost. Now, they are still a playoff team, but at the same time, it wasn't the same. I think that they can only beat who they beat. They beat people convincingly outside of 1 or 2 games. So anything beyond that is nitpicking. I think it's very impressive that the 49ers were able to go 6-0 into division, which is super hard to do. I don't think we can overlook that. So, yeah, the 49ers absolutely being able to take care of business, it's very important.
It really is impressive, and especially from last year, if I remember correctly, were they 2-4 in the division? The only wins coming against the Rams. So completely different situation this year. 6-0, no game was ever in doubt. We have a comment here. I'm going to completely butcher this name. Aurelien de Rosier. Hey guys, French 49ers fan here. I should be in San Francisco for next week's playoff game. So excited. Any advice on how much time before I should leave for the stadium? Public transit.
You should eat breakfast right outside of Levi's, bro.
Yeah. It's going to take a long time.
That stadium is really hard to get in and out of, the way that it's in like a business park right next to Great America. There's a couple hotels right around. My advice to you would be to stay on site. So there's the Hilton that's right on the property, like in the same parking lot, or there is the Hyatt Regency, which is like kitty corner. Stay at one of those two. Make sure that you can just walk straight to the game, because it's a madhouse getting in and out, and you don't want to have to deal with that. But congratulations on being able to go to the playoff game, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's huge. I don't know if this is, well, I would assume based on your question, it is your first time going to a game, and your first game being a playoff game. That's huge. So congrats. I hope you have a great time. Hopefully the 49ers blow it out of the park, and it's not even close. You can relax the entire time. But I agree with Matt. Get there early, maybe enjoy the tailgate. When we went for the Bucs game, we got there at like 10:30 maybe. We went and got breakfast, got a bagel, walked over, and were able to get in. I think they opened the stadium at like.
And it was still kind of a struggle for you guys to get in a little bit too.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
For him, he doesn't have to worry about driving, because the traffic, once you get there, if you're parking, it's like an hour just sitting there. And
trying to get into the stadium to park, it'll take you like an hour for sure. I stayed on at the Hilton, so I was just able to walk across. I was there like the second they opened the stadium. I was there, and it was fun to walk. It's fun to walk around the stadium and kind of take in everything. Grab a drink, grab some food before it gets too crazy in there, before the line gets too crazy. And yeah, you can walk in there.
With that all said, I don't think there's much else to recap for this game.
No, I do want to shout out JJ Watt. Hell of a career, hell of a last game. Class act, one of the better dudes in the NFL in terms of charity and stuff like that. Absolute beast. So congrats to JJ Watt. Enjoy your retirement, man.
Yeah, one hell of a career. It was nice to see the 49ers kind of celebrating him. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. We'll do a season recap later in the week going into the playoffs and and preview of that playoff game. But with that all said, hit like, hit subscribe. Matt, you want to take us out?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing who comes out tonight. Green Bay and Detroit are playing right now. They, it's either Green Bay or Seattle getting the honor of coming to Levi's Stadium and getting that work. So with that being said, we love having you here as always. And it's the end of the regular season, always kind of a bittersweet time, but we made the dance, and that's all you can do. So going forward, we just want to see more dominant victories. That being said, thank you as always for joining us. And until next time, go Niners.